we are gonna. I was talking to a buddy. Remember I think the second day of class, Colonel Rich Gary from the we've been working together on projects and working to extract people from Afghanistan. He said, "What are you talking about today?" And I said, "We're going to talk about critical race theory in the police." He said, "Oh my God, you're a masochist." And I thought, well, I am, but what I want to do is invite you into how I think about these things. Okay, and this actually, the reason how I think, how my brain works, how I try to consider lots of different sides of very complex issues and complex equations, how some things are things that don't seem right to me. I question them, and then I dig further into the data, and I don't know, and no matter what I say, it really is going to bother people who think I'm too liberal or I think I'm too conservative. I have talked about these issues with audiences that are all or nearly all black or brown. I've talked about them with the police. I do a lot of work with police, so I have a lot of experience with policing and how police think, and I end the whole process with just a lot of questions, and I'm really in some ways not sure what I think anymore. But what I want to do is invite you in to some of the data and then ask some questions. And we have 3 volunteers, right? So if you could just say your name, just so you're getting involved. So where you're from, your name, where you're from, and you know the drill.
I'm Antonia. I'm Nigerian American.
I'm Sam. I'm from Bucks County, which is outside of Philadelphia.
You can use that mic, by the way.
I'm Nick. I'm from Maryland, and I'm studying journalism.
And you're half Palestinian?
Yeah.
And you are Nigerian American, or American Nigerian, or African American Nigerian African. What are you? How do you identify?
Nigerian American. Well, Nigerian first, then American. I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
But I was raised in Nigeria, and then I came back to study.
And your parents, do they say? They probably say you're Nigerian. Do they say you're Nigerian American, or do they say you're Nigerian?
Yeah, because my dad is Nigerian American as well, because he was Nigerian first, then he became an American.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's funny that. Yeah. All right, bro. And do you identify as Palestinian American, or how do you?
I mean, usually I just tell my friends I'm Arabic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, bro, Sam, just a white guy from Bucks County?
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right, man. So I am, and what I'm going to invite you all to do is look at these data that I'm going to show, okay? So you're going to spend a bit of time looking up here. Look at these data that I'm going to show, and we're going to walk through it together, okay? And if I have an extra microphone in my back pocket that I can come up and take a question or comment or something from anybody else in the room. But I just want to walk through some of the complexities of this stuff. And this really started the other day when I watched the videotape of the police in Dayton, Ohio, pulling the young man out of his car. Not so young, he was 28, I think, so, but younger than me. A black guy, they pulled him over and said they wanted to search his car, and they wanted to bring the drug dogs in to search. And he can't be in the car when the dogs are going through the car. So he had to get out, and he said, "I can't get out, I'm paralyzed." And they said, "Well, you have to get out." And he's like, "I can't, my legs don't work, I'm paralyzed." And they just really demanded that he get out. And they said, "Well, if you don't get out, we're going to pull you out," right? And essentially that's what they did. And they pulled him out, and they put him on the ground, and they handcuffed him. And, I used to be the advisor to the Rutgers Handicapped Student Organization and the Disabled Student Organization. And so, I know the trauma that would be involved in that. Like, come on. I have a lot of friends who are paraplegic, quadriplegic, so I really get that. And I saw the police doing that, and I immediately wanted to get on the phone to some of my police friends and say, yo, what's going on here? But I know what I would hear from them, right? I would hear that some of them would be really pissed at the police, and some would say, well, yeah, but they followed directions and they followed procedures, and others would say, yeah, but we wouldn't, it just would be sort of all over the place, right? But they would all agree that that was actually quite a problem. Nobody ever asked the police, right? So we often have no idea what the police think and what they say, right? But I asked the police, so I actually have kind of a window into this. But I want to walk us through here and we're only going to look at small parts of this, right? And what's going on, because y'all are aware that we've had in some ways the largest uprising, people in the streets that we've ever had in the United States. More, after the death of George Floyd, which one could say the murder of George Floyd. And by the way, you should know that I was once in a room with 30 police officers, and every one of the 30 police officers, I referred to it as the death of George Floyd, and they said it wasn't a death of George Floyd. It was a murder of George Floyd, right? I just want to complexify that a little bit. I'm saying death just because I said death, and they said it wasn't death. The cop killed him. So the police are saying that cop killed him. So understand that it gets but after that happened, we had an uprising here in the U.S., more people in the streets than we had during the Civil Rights Movement, in more cities and more activity. And so, you have this idea in the Civil Rights Movement, the whole country was in the streets and protesting, and that was not the case. So this is big. All right, can you go next slide? And I'm going to get to you all, and we're going to get there in a second, so we're all good. One of the things that's really unfortunate in this conversations we've been having about the police and race and racism is that we've all balkanized, and this is what happens. We make teams. People make teams, and the more people are I don't know, for whatever reason, we just make teams. I don't know why the hell we have to make teams, but we do. And because we're at war, basically. My wife would say we're at war, and so we make teams because we're at war, and we are at war. And so people got to jump on some team. So it's like Black Lives Matter, and so then suddenly we have Blue Lives Matter, and then White Lives Matter. And I don't know, All Lives Matter, and Life Matters, and like, oh my God, right? And so once we start making teams, it's like we stop listening to something that the other team might be saying. And for the most part, if you really listen to each one of these teams, if you sat down and thoughtfully, instead of just the ones that are like yelling and screaming and calling the other team names, if you actually listen to what their concerns and their fears were, probably you would all agree that, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Not all of them, right? But not every one of their concerns, but people have concerns, and the concerns make, there's something there always below. Okay, so let me start with these data. Are you all going to be able to see, Nick, do you think you can see this? So let me show you this, right? These folks took FBI data, and these are academics, and they very carefully, I'm not going to tell you how they came up with this, but I saw this, and I thought, this is the lifetime risk of being killed by the police. And I saw this, and I thought, oh man, that just seems, so my mind says, remember, I'm the guy that things are rarely as bad as they seem to be. And so, but I'm looking at this and I'm saying, wow, look, so people of African ancestry in the U.S., they say African American, but it's Black American, right? So this would include Nigerian Americans, African, so it's almost 100. So probably about like 95 out of 100. You have per 100,000 people. So if you fill up Beaver Stadium with people who identify as African, 95 people, just keep filling it up with 100,000 Black Americans. And 95 of those are going to, in their lifetime, are going to be killed by the police. And, okay, is that a lot or not a lot? I don't know. That's the first question. Is that a lot? Is it not a lot, right? Native American is a little over 50. Latinos, Latinx is actually a little over 50. Native Americans probably about 55. The total is a little over 50. And white people, as best as I can assess, it's a little over 40. Okay? So my first question to you all, those are some big differences, right? What's your first thought? And you can just keep these mics on. Yeah, what's your first thought about that? Those are some serious differences. Anybody who wants to take that? Like, look at that's really challenging, right? So, what do you think?
I mean, my first thought would be like, okay, everyone's likely to be killed by the police.
Wait, hang on 1 second. Okay, go ahead.
Like, everyone's likely to be killed by the police, but then African Americans are more likely to be.
Yeah, more. I mean, look, per 100,000, right? It's not. Well, what do you mean everybody? It's like, I mean, okay, hang on. Let's just look at Americans. It's a little over 50. 50 per 100,000. Think about that. Fill up Beaver Stadium. So let me put it to you another way. So this is where you're going. Fill up Beaver Stadium and take 50 people and remove them. Okay, they've all been killed by the police. Put another 100,000, fill it up again, take 50 people. And just keep doing that till you get to the entire population of the United States. 100,000 people at a time. 50 people. Is 50 people being killed? 50 out of 100,000? Is that a lot? How do you see that?
I mean, it's still people's life, so like, I don't know how to weigh that.
Okay.
50 people might be small compared to 100,000, but they're still people. It's not like it's like biscuits or something. It's human's life.
Okay.
So I don't know how to weigh that. And then you're saying 100,000 people and 95 people?
No,
95?
50.
Oh,
50.
wow,
50 people out of 100,000 people are killed by the police.
50 are killed by the police.
Yep.
Wait, but the Black Americans are
No,
95.
but Black Americans, it's about 95.
95 people.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's a lot higher.
Okay. Well, it's still people's lives. So 95 people might be a small number compared to 100,000 people,
Yeah.
but those are like people's life
Okay.
that could have been continued if they weren't killed.
Okay. How about somebody else? Sam, you want to take a shot?
I feel like since I've been aware of this issue of, how the police conduct their business, the data doesn't necessarily surprise me based off just kind of like what you see in the media and on the news.
Yeah.
Kind of like how, dialogue is facilitated. It's just not surprising to me.
So what's not surprising about it?
Just like the fact that African Americans are like almost twice as likely
Uh-huh.
to get killed by a police officer compared to any other race.
Uh-huh.
And like
Uh-huh.
how minority groups are, significantly more likely to be killed than, white people.
Okay, and how do you come to that? How do you come to that conclusion? Where did you get that from? Like you said, the media, the news, whatever. Like, where did you get that from?
I guess I don't want to say it's been like, I feel like it's been the trending topic, especially since
Yeah.
George Floyd. So it's just like very relevant in what you see on social media too, and in terms of like what you talk about with, like in classes like these where it's like a facilitated dialogue, or like
Yeah.
if you have a diverse group of friends, like it's a topic that comes up and like
Okay.
maybe not gets debated but gets opened up.
Okay. All right. Okay. Nick, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Antonia. Like, it may seem like a small number, but these are like still people at the end of the day who are dying
Okay.
that otherwise, wouldn't have died that way, or depending on what the situation is, shouldn't have died that way.
Okay. All right. So let's now look at some stuff. Okay. That's the conclusion that most people would come to, right? Police are, and when you think police are killing people, how are police killing? What are people doing when police kill them? Let me ask you that, Nick. What are people doing when all these people who are killed by the police? What are they doing when police kill them?
I mean, it varies. You know, there's so many different situations where it happens. If you're somebody walking around, you're walking towards a police officer with a gun, they're probably going to shoot you. But in other situations, you know, some people just die walking down the street at night because they look sketchy.
Uh-huh. Okay, that's a big statement. What you just said right there. So in the world, I'm just allowing us. You all need to. You all are representatives of the average 20-something American, right? So you're gonna talk. But what you just said right there is a huge statement. But some people are just walking down the street and I don't know, they look sketchy and they get killed, right? Like, okay. Right. Like if there were a room full of police in here, you can imagine you'd have a lot of hands that go up like, oh, hold on a second, cowboy. All right. Well, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so starting January 1st, so 5 years and about 10 months, a certain number of people have been killed by the police. What do you think that number is? Actually, well, I'm going to make it easier for you. How many people are killed each year by the police?
I want to say 100,000.
100,000?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, bro, go.
I was gonna say like maybe 10, 15,000.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to say like 1,500 since 2015, probably. I don't know.
1,500 since 2015?
Maybe 1,500 a year, probably.
Yeah, how is it each year? Yeah, what do you think? You said 100,000 for all the years. Yeah.
I don't, maybe close to 20.
20,000?
Yeah.
And you're saying about 15 maybe? And you're saying about 1,500 a year. Okay. Come up with a number, everybody, right? Think about your number. How many people were killed by the police, and what are we talking about? And what do you mean? And what do we mean? And how is it? Right? Right now, you're allowed to talk to your neighbor because you got to say something to confirm. What do you think it is? Yeah? What do you think? Yeah. Okay. 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 All right. What do you think? What's that? 100 people per year? Yeah. All right. Wait. Okay, so let's go. So you said you thought about 100 a year. Okay. I mean, the numbers are all, when I do this with police, the numbers are all over the place also, right? I've had some police to give these really, really high numbers, and I'm like, come on, man. All right, go ahead. So it's about 1,000, just so you know, it's about 1,000 people per year. About 1,000 people per year, okay? So, you know, you were way low, you were way high. So now the question that I have is this. What percentage or how many of these people are white? And you all, we can start here. We'll start with Sam. How many of these people, what percentage are black?
I would say probably like 65.
65% are black?
That's what I would guess.
Yeah? Okay, so like 2/3.
Yeah.
Nick, what do you think?
I'm going to say like 45, 50.
45 to 50%. And then, wait again. Antonia?
65.
About 2/3?
Yeah.
Where do you come up with that? Like, Sam, where'd you come up with that number?
I have no like reason as to why I came up with it. It was just kind of, I don't know, I guess an uneducated guess.
Okay, but that's fine, right? If you were sitting around, that's fine. I'm asking you, right? You're on the spot. I mean, the camera's on you. This is out on YouTube. I'm like, dude, what percentage are black, right? So you got to come up with a number. Because you're a white guy, you're probably going to highball it a little bit, right? Yeah. Go ahead.
Probably.
Well, and why is that? What's your thinking behind that? Do you understand highball? You get that, right? Why is that?
I don't really know why I would. I mean, I guess it's because I grew up in an area where a very privileged area where the police, the only thing they do is kind of give you a speeding ticket. So, and based off, how kind of polarizing and, significant of a social topic it's been,
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's out of, empathy, sympathy, or, but I don't know. I feel and, I guess in the media, you mostly see, when a black person is killed.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of where my guesses are coming from.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, listen, what you just said was you don't know if it's empathy, or I'm going to give you the other side, or self-preservation. Because, as a white guy, you're going to learn. By the way, this is all of this that we're doing right here this is critical race theory. And all critical race theory is talking about this stuff. So now I'm going to steer into the curve here. As a white guy, bro, in a mixed world, you can't lowball it about police. The narrative in the United States, especially the narrative among college students, and the more liberal narrative, for sure, is the narrative at Penn State, which is a predominantly liberal institution, is going to be that police kill far more black people than they kill white people, disproportionately speaking. So, you can't be well, you have to go with that narrative. You can't do anything else. So, of course, you're going to highball it, and you're going to highball it. You're half Palestinian, so you have a little bit of a pass, but not much. Yeah. Okay, well, so do you have a thought on that? What do you think, by the way? I'm just going to ask you. What percentage are black? 40%, you think? Okay, can you go to the next slide? So I didn't do the percentages. By the way, the percentage on the right is the percentage of the population. So I did not actually calculate the percentage. You could do that in 2 seconds, right? But of the 6,632 people that were killed by the police, the majority of them are white. The highest number of them are white, okay? So, but blacks are clearly disproportionate to their population. Hey, who's got the calculator? Can you do it really fast? Dude, give me the percentage for black people right there. Who's going to get it first, man? So it's 23.5%. So black people represent 12% of the population, but double that number of black people are killed by the police. So it's all right. But it's not 60, it's not 2/3. And, if you're only watching CNN or MSNBC or, watching whatever kind of the mainstream news headlines, you're mostly going to see the stories and be bombarded with stories of black people who are killed by the police. So it's understandable that we would that the average person who's following media is going to overestimate that. But nonetheless, so the question then is 6,632 a lot of people in the past 5.5 years killed by the police? Is that a lot of people? So you're still it's still a life. Yeah. It's still a life. It's still a life. Okay? So so now this is me thinking. So I calculated all these numbers, I'm looking at these numbers, right? And these numbers come from the Washington Post, was the first organization to really carefully collect the data on the number of Americans who are killed by the police. No one ever really did this. In law enforcement agencies, and there are federal, state, county, local law enforcement agencies, the TSA, it's one after another, have never had a central clearinghouse where they collected this information. So we never really had it. And some people don't submit the information, right? 244 of the 6,632 are unknown. People don't submit it. And a lot of the information is wrong. And a report just came out recently, last week, and it was discussed in the New York Times that some of it, there's undercounting anyway. Not by an extreme amount, but there's undercounting. People, it's really hard to get these data. So I put these data. Me, Sam, who's thinking, hey, I want to understand this. Because I'm watching these protests, and I'm watching people go down the street with signs that, like, police are committing genocide. And I'm like, genocide? I know what genocide is, but I mean, is this genocide? I want to understand. It's not that I want to be fair. It's not that I want to be ideological. I want to understand what is going on. So I look at 6,600 people and I ask, well, is that a lot of people? So yeah, everyone's alive. Okay, but now we're going to go into this a little more. Okay? Okay, now the rate per million, these are using these data now, at which people were killed by the police, the rate per million, okay? It's a lot higher for Black Americans, Hispanic Americans than it is for white Americans, okay? So now we want to understand that. So Black people say in the United States, hey, we've had this experience with authority. The police in the United States really emerged, and not all Black people, but this is the narrative, and this is to a great degree true, that in the first off, all throughout slavery, you have to control people. You have to control white people, you have to control poor people. You got to control poor white people, you got to control Black people, slaves. After slavery, same thing. You got to control people. And then, once more and more poor white workers were coming to the U.S., to work in the steel mills and the mills and coal mines and so on and so forth, all the Slavs and the Eastern Europeans and so on, you got to control them because we can't let them unionize. And in many parts of the United States, the first police forces were like the Pinkertons. They were people that the rich industrialists paid to suppress all of the union activity. And then to keep an eye out for Black people. So it's like police have been used in a way to control. So then I think, okay, so what's going on here? Right? What's going on here? Is this just racism? Because I want to know that. How do you interpret, is this racism? I mean, how do you interpret that, these numbers right here, bro?
I mean, I look at those numbers and I get confused because at the last slide, you see the white rate is a lot higher.
Yeah.
But then you look at the other rates, and now the numbers are a lot higher. So personally, I just look at this, I'm confused more than anything.
Yeah. They're meaning different things. Mm-hmm. And I'm not gonna dig into them. They're accurate numbers from the data that they get. So I'm showing it. I'm slicing up the data, and I'm just showing it to you in some different ways. Not to make an ideological point. I'm just trying to elicit something. This is the kind of stuff you see. And this is the kind of stuff that shows up in the headline of a newspaper or the headline of a story on CNN or MSNBC or somewhere. Probably not Fox News, but maybe Fox News. And it shows up there. And then you see this and say, oh man, that's like really, really big. That's serious. Antonia, do you have any thought on that?
I would say like the numbers represent like how often they interact with the police.
Okay.
Because I think Sam had just mentioned like the most he would get in his society is like a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
Whereas a Black person who lives in Brooklyn, you're walking down, you're seeing cops at night. It's how often you are interacting with them.
Okay.
Or I guess like altercating with them in certain, because I know in New York, like you could be in the bus or in the train station and you would see a cop walking into. So like, I don't know if that's what those data represent, but that's just where my mind.
Great question. And I'm going to respond to that. And that may or may not, and racism may or may not play into that. Now it could, because people would say, oh, we have Black people here, we need many more police officers, right? And it could also be that, police tend to be concentrated where people are concentrated, because we know where people are concentrated, there's likely to be more crime. Always, right? You're going to have more crime. At least crime that you see. Lots of crimes happen in rural parts of Pennsylvania or wherever you're going to be that are not reported. Nobody knows about it. It just happens. But there are crimes, but it just goes on and it's just under the radar and it's not something that we think about. But it may be that, yeah, white people are much more likely to live in areas where the population density is less, and so there's going to be less police. And so therefore, white people, I'm not talking all white people, because obviously many white people, you know what I mean, but disproportionately speaking, are less likely to have interactions with police. And so like, okay, if you don't have an interaction with the police, you can't be killed by the police. That's pretty simple. So, okay. All right. So let's look at this. Let's look at another how many of these 6,600 people were unarmed when they were killed by the police? Give me an actual number. What do you think, bro?
Say like 200.
200, bro.
I would say like 2,000.
Go ahead.
Like close to 5, if not more.
5,000?
I mean,
Most of them?
Yeah, I mean, the cops is not just gonna go around shooting people for no reason. So
Wait, no, unarmed. So how many are unarmed?
yeah, I'm
So
saying like close to 5,000, if not more.
No, but that would be cops shooting people for no reason.
Wait. The people that are unarmed
Yeah.
out of the 6,000, I'm
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
is 5.
You know, the unarmed, so if you're saying cops would not, aren't going to
Wait,
shoot people for no reason, you mean...
unarmed.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
okay,
So you mean
okay.
1,000.
1,000.
Yeah, okay, I got you. All right, about 1,000. Yep. Okay, cool. What do you think? How many are unarmed? About 1,000? This is a big question. You all got an answer in your head? Everybody? So the answer for these data is 422. Okay? So now we think about this. When you think about police killing people, police killing civilians, police are killing, our minds naturally go to police killing unarmed people. These are the ones that make the headlines. These are the ones that are just over and over and over again. You're going to be in the headlines because these are the most awful things you can possibly imagine. Even among the police, the worst possible thing for a police officer, and I've talked to a number of police officers about this, who almost had it happen to them, the worst possible thing is to accidentally kill somebody. Because you got to live with that. The soldiers too. I mean, if you have soldiers, if you have people in the military in your family, or you have friends, like the last thing you want to do is kill someone who's innocent of anything, right? Now, just because they had a weapon doesn't mean they were innocent. They were guilty of something, right? Because somebody might have had a weapon, but not really brandished a weapon, and they still got killed by the police. So they were still not in an aggressive posture or whatever. However that would be. But when we think about police killing civilians, this is the graph that we often don't talk about. And this is the graph that police talk about all the time. This is the one that for them matters. First off, no police officer, and I will tell you, there are some psychopaths on police forces, no question about it. But I've talked to with scores of police. Nobody ever wants to take somebody's life. And that's how they talk about it, take somebody's life. So this isn't apologetics for the police. This is the police are you and me. The police are all of us. The police are no different. I wouldn't want to do that. They wouldn't want to do that. There are psychopaths on police forces, and there are psychopaths who are not on police forces. But for the vast majority of people, of police, they're not psychopaths, and they don't want to take someone's life, and this is the thing that matters to them most. So this is big. So how is it? It's 400. So now let me ask you, 422 people. Let's just stick there for a second. Is that a lot of people? Yeah. Of course it is. Every one of those people is a life. Every one of those people could be anybody in here. It could be, it could be my wife. It could be me. It could be one of the three of you. It could be any of us. So yes, that's a lot. And yet, like, okay, so how do we get there? How are we in this space where that's happening? And by the way, toy weapons, a lot of the toy weapons, when you see that, these are replica weapons, you all. This isn't like a pink squirt gun that I had when I was a kid. These are replica weapons, and a lot of those killings are suicides on the part of people. Suicide by cop, which would be the worst possible thing if you're a cop, to have to go through that. But nonetheless, the other instruments are any number of things. If you're wondering, by the way, swords and axes and hammers and machetes and, any number of possible weapons that would be, okay? Do you guys have any questions about this? Does anything come up for you? Go ahead.
I mean, you just mentioned like suicide by cops, like if you have a weapon on you. So why do so many people like buy a gun then? Because it just don't make no sense to me. If they're being killed because they had a weapon, wouldn't it be more safe if you don't have a weapon on you?
No, but the suicide by cop though are the people who want to die, and a sure way to die and to go out, and I don't know why people do it. We don't really understand. But get a replica gun, get any gun, but go buy a replica gun, which you can buy anywhere, and just go to a police officer and point it at the police officer, eventually you're probably something's going to happen. The police officer is going to protect themselves, right? Do you have a thought, bro?
I mean, I had a question about the in a vehicle one.
Uh-huh.
That one, like, you could consider unarmed as well, because if you're in a car.
Now, these are felonious assaults of police. These are people who are trying to kill a police officer with their car. Yeah. Now, some of them may be that, in fact, I know of one case a couple years ago where the person wasn't really trying to kill the police officer with a car. And the police officer was brought up on charges of that. The police officer killed the person, but the police officer really could have gotten out of the way and didn't get out of the way. But, within the confines of the law, I mean, it's all really complicated, right? But it's easy for people on the outside to come up with the ways to see this. Okay, so let's go with another thing. Unarmed people. How many of give me a sense of what percentage of unarmed people were black? The 422 were black and white and Hispanic. Do you think there's a difference? Do you think it just goes with their numbers?
I mean, based off the first set of data, based off the 6,632, it was what, like 60% white people or something? What was the
Yeah.
number for that?
The numbers in the United States are 60% white.
Yeah, so I feel that would, the best guess I can give for that 422 is 60% of that.
Yeah, okay. So you would just go with the population numbers.
Yeah, I would.
Is that fair? Yeah? Here, let's go to the next slide. Go ahead. Is it not going? Did we freeze? Hang on. Dude. All right. Hang on 1 second. Are you going to have to restart, bro? Hey, so let me just kick. I'm gonna walk through the next slide because I want to keep going, right? So the majority of the 422 unarmed people who were killed were white. 175 of the 422 were white. Okay, 137 were black Americans, black people in the U.S., and 79 were Hispanic. And then we have other and we have unknown. Okay? And one of the things that's kind of telling here in the United States is that when we talk about Americans, people in this country who are killed by the police, I don't hear white people having a conversation about this. Even though there are more unarmed white people who are being killed by the police than unarmed black or Hispanic people. So why do you think white people aren't talking about this?
So I read an article once because I had that same question, and it was about like this family whose son got killed by the police, and I guess like the news was trying to poach them to like speak about it, and they took like the settlement money, and they also like explained that like they don't want to partake in the hate the police culture, and they respect what the police are doing. So that's why I would say like that's probably the reasoning behind why there's not a lot of white people coming out, because obviously they're gonna sue and get compensated for the death. And I'm not just saying like, oh, if someone dies, you should go get money, but obviously they have to like be compensated for that. And then also they don't want to promote that hate the police because they see that they need the police in their society. So
okay, let me respond. This is my mind going, right? The people, the communities that are the idea of defund the police, right? We're going to defund the police. We're going to take money away from the police. The communities that are most vocally opposed to that are urban, poor black communities, right? So not white communities, not like rich white communities. It's like urban, poor white communities are just like, no way, right? We need the police, right? So you got it. I think it's not that white people are going to say, hey, we're going to get a settlement. So I just want to take what you're saying a little bit. Maybe some white people, right, would say that, families, but much more that what my reading of this and knowing people and talking to people is that there's a sense of you believe in the system. The system will work itself out. So if one of my family members is killed by the police, I as a white person am much more likely to believe that the system is fair if you do the right things and you do everything you're asked to do and this sort of thing. The system will treat you well. And it will be fair, and if the police officer unlawfully killed my child, that police officer is going to pay for that, right? Because that's how the system works. Because you're going to more likely believe in the system. When it comes, especially with law enforcement, when it comes to black people have almost zero reason to believe in the system. If we go, black people of the past had zero reason to believe in the system. Now it's different. Now it's very different. So I'm changing what I just said. Go back to slavery, post-slavery, right up into the early 1960s. Like the police are the arm of the law, man. The police are there to control. So like I'm not gonna trust the police. Like why would I trust the police if I'm black? Like my survival is based on the fact that I'm not trusting the police. It's only recently, just in the past 5 decades, that the police have actually, there's been a much greater amount of equanimity and of equality and fairness in the way the police have enforced the laws between different racial groups of people, right? So I would say that. Now, when I hear today, black Americans tell a different story about trusting or not trusting the police, right? Because things have changed a lot. But so let me ask you this. So we've looked at the numbers of how many people are killed by the police, all right? How many police officers are there, by the way? How many sworn law enforcement officers are there in the U.S.? Do you have any guess? Do you have a guess? Dude, I've asked this to hundreds of law enforcement officers, and not 1% get the answer. So, you're all right.
like just below 50,000.
Below 50,000? Maybe? Okay, can you go to the next slide? So it's about 900,000. And there's an estimated to be about 65 million encounters. 65 million encounters between police and civilians.
Is that per year?
65 million per year. That's a lot of, this isn't a cop walking down the street, getting a cup of coffee and waving to someone. This is 65 million engagements, 10 million arrests. So in my mind, there are a lot of opportunities for things to go south. 900,000 police. So you got 900,000, right? So some of them are going to be psychopaths. Can we just accept that that's the case? Some are going to be just in it. They're in it for the wrong reason. The other cops wish they weren't cops. The other cops want them out of the force. There's nothing they can do. They're there. Their bosses want them out of the force. It's annoying. They shouldn't be cops. They never should have been cops, but they are, and somehow they got in, and something happens, whatever. But 900,000 sworn police officers. About 65 million engagements, right? Contacts. That's from the FBI, and 10 million arrests. So now, with that in mind, I'm going to use the 422 number, because I understand 6,600 people who were killed by the police. And we're only talking people who were killed by the police. We're not talking about people who were beat up by the police, people who were wrongly convicted, all these other things. We're just going to focus on this one thing. In some of the other 6,600 people, even though they were armed, maybe the police found something on them. In some cases, police planted something on them, right? But that probably doesn't happen a lot. But here, we're going to go with 422. Okay, we're going to use that number. Understand, you got it? So I get that. Given these data right here, 65 million contacts, 10 million arrests, is 422 a large number? Is that a lot of people?
I mean, it's a small fraction, but we're still kind of sticking with the idea that you can't place a value on a life.
Okay.
So no matter what the denominator is in that, compared to that 422, it's still kind of a large number.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of building off of that, as you mentioned earlier, it could be anyone. It could be your wife. It could be
Yeah.
us three. It could be somebody in this room.
Yeah.
And because of that, somebody's life is forever changed.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I'd rather the 422 be added to the 10 million arrests than them taking the life, because
Yeah.
it's not the office's job to do so.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, the system will work itself out. So if you're putting them, charging them, having them go through the courts and whatever,
Yeah.
it should work itself out.
It should work itself out.
Yeah.
But things happen.
I do
Right?
understand that, but
Yeah.
it's still.
So, but things happen. So for one, let me just offer something here, right? First off, now this is critical race theory stuff, right? So now I'm going into that world. Let's just purely think about race. Can we go back one slide? This is not just about black people and Hispanic people. It's also about white people. And if we were really being honest in this if we were being upfront and straightforward in this conversation about police and police violence and who's harmed and so on, we would be talking about all these numbers in lots of different ways, but we're not. And in part we're not because white people aren't thinking about this stuff, right? And for whatever reason, we're not, because white people are trusting. Not all white, some white people are, right? I'm generalizing, but there is a way in which a lot of white people aren't really putting that out there, and so okay, so that's part of what we're not doing. But we're also, if we were being really honest, we would be talking about this in much more complex ways. But go to the next slide. You're asking police to do a very, very difficult job. Right? A really difficult job. Almost an impossible. What the police say is you're asking us, the police, to do an impossible job. You're asking us to come into situations, make split-second decisions constantly that involves somebody's life, including involves my own life. My own life as a police officer, right? And you're asking us to never, ever make a mistake. and demanding that. And if we make a mistake, right, and we don't want to make a mistake, right? We don't, because you don't. Because, come on. Like, again, can we accept that police officer, does anyone have a parent, who's got a parent who's a police officer? Is it retire, your dad? Can I ask you a couple questions? Do you want to stand up here? Do you mind? All right. So what's your name?
Ashlyn.
Ashley?
Lynn.
Ashlyn?
Yes.
And so your father is a retired police officer?
Yeah.
And what's your father like? Tell us about him.
I don't know. He's pretty serious.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, he's good. I like him.
Love
him.
So, is
Yeah,
he a psychopath?
No.
Is he a nice guy?
Yes.
What's he say about policing? Does he talk about it? Because a lot of cops don't talk about it with their families.
A little bit. He was actually a police officer in my own town.
Uh-huh.
So that was like, sometimes obviously he had to like keep things private because they were like people we knew or whatever. But I think what you just said like before about how it's a really like hard job was like, you summed it up perfectly. And I agree with and I think he would agree with that too.
That it's a really impossible, difficult job.
Yeah, and I mean, he worked with guys who weren't even psychopaths, and he wished that they didn't that he didn't work with them and that they weren't police officers, because some people just aren't meant to do that job, which is scary because it's such a serious job. But he was very good at his job.
And how often were you afraid for your father?
One time.
One time? Did you think about when he left to go to work? How did you sometimes worry that?
No, it was just like one incident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One incident? Okay. How about him? How often did he talk about being afraid?
No, but I'm
Yeah.
sure he did it with my mom and stuff, but not with me.
What did he say about the changes in being a police officer over the years?
Yeah, so he started in '95. And it was like very different. Like he didn't get a 4-year degree or like anything like that. So it's a little bit more serious now, like to become a police officer. And there's like a lot more rules, obviously, that they're like willing to follow. But considering like when he started, it was very different.
Yeah, a lot of training, so much
Yes.
training, right? Because it has to be like, it has to be, you just can't make a mistake. Remember the story of the police officer who was like a 17-year veteran out in San Francisco? Thought she pulled the taser out and she shot that man. But she didn't pull her taser. She pulled her gun. And even cops. So I've been talking to cops about this. And the cops are saying, dude, she's a bad cop. I mean, and I'm arguing with the cops. So just as a thing, right? This is me thinking out loud. Okay, you all right? This is how my mind works. I have this right here is an earphone. It's an earpiece for me, so I can hear what you're saying in the microphones and so on, right? I have to turn it up, I have to turn it down because I don't want to listen to myself talk. This is my mic, so if I flip this off, we're back on, okay? So I'm constantly back and forth on these, and I make mistakes. I turn the wrong one, and I've been doing this for 37 years or so, right? I don't make mistakes. You just don't make mistakes. It's like forgetting how to walk. Cops made mistakes, and you can't do that because somebody else's life could be involved, right? And so the training is profound. Is your dad a racist?
No.
This is what people think about cops.
No,
right?
I know.
Yeah, I mean, the police are just beside themselves about the moment. I have police who don't allow their children. Their children don't tell any of their friends that they're police officers. Their father's a police officer because have you ever had that experience?
No, I mean he was like a police officer in my town, so
So everybody knows.
Everybody knew, yeah.
Okay, but there are a lot of police who their own children don't even say to anyone that my father or my mother's a police officer because they'll be ostracized, and especially in recent years. It's really, really difficult. Yeah. Well, okay. Cool. Yeah, I think the reason I wanted you to I wanted to humanize, like the fact that we're all in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Ashlyn. Hey, so here's the thing. There's so much tragedy. There's so much tragedy. And that we're trying to understand and comprehend what this is all about. It's really easy to just look at police and say, oh, these are the racist cops, racist police system, racist this, racist that. It's really easy to do that. It's much more difficult to walk through what the real scenarios are and actually have conversations with real human beings to find out, like, okay, what's really going on? And we have this idea that there's like this blue wall of silence, right, where the police are always going to protect themselves. But that's on the outside. That's not always happening. And when you actually study what goes on inside of police departments, that's not always happening either. But here, go to the next thing. Here's the other side that you don't see. If you're a police officer, right? In 2020, 60,000 officers were assaulted. Now, mind you, 10 million arrests, so 60,000 probably isn't that many. And yet it is. It's a lot. Like, what is it? It's a lot, isn't it? Right? But 30% of them were injured as a result of the assaults. 30% of the 60,000, that's a lot of people. And on average, about 50 police officers are killed every year. So now we got this thing. We're living in this society that seems like each side is ramping up the violence, ramping up the violent language. You know, we're screaming at the racist police, and the police are responding in their stoic way with more and more weaponry, because as it gets more dangerous for them, they're going to protect themselves more. So here, go to no, hang on. Keep going. Keep going one more. Okay, here. Can you see this shot? So on the left, this is 1965. Here are some police officers in Washington, D.C. They're wearing shirts. They have a gun. The gun shoots 6 bullets. They got it. Look, the guy's got another 6 bullets right here. But by the time he reloads his gun, I mean, those of you who are gun people, you know that's going to take a while. And in a stressful situation, you know, that's going to be really difficult. This is police here. Here's police today. This isn't even paramilitary policing, right? So police will sometimes wear a Under Armour, then their shirt, and then another bulletproof vest. I mean, this is like, what world are we in? So society ups the game, and then they up the game. And then it's just like we're at war. And then we have these mistakes get made, or police, they break protocol, or they don't follow procedure, or they make a mistake, or whatever it is, or they're assholes and they don't need to be assholes. But things happen. And then on the outside, we look in and we say, like, okay, we think we know what's going on. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think, okay, maybe because I do read up on what I believe in or speak about, but I think the message people are trying to say is like, yes, police officers make mistakes.
Yeah.
But should they be accountable for those mistakes?
Yep.
Because, you know, not all the crimes that are committed are intentional.
Yep.
And people go to jail for mistakes they've made. So that's, I think, the biggest thing that, like, they're trying to, like, pound down on, because
So
I don't know.
No, so how many law enforcement officers are held accountable for their...
I honestly don't know. There's not, like, enough data out there for me to there's different sources have different datas.
Okay, I'm going to give you some data. What do you think? Do you have a sense of it? Do you guys have how many police officers are held accountable?
I mean, how do you define, like, held accountable?
Well, just in
Like,
some
is
way,
getting a
right?
suspension getting held accountable.
Or getting fired.
I don't know. I just
There
know
was
nothing about that
in
data.
a police department I worked with, there were 2 police officers that were texting back and forth, and they were texting the N-bomb, and they got fired.
I feel like a good amount of police officers would be held accountable, but I think sometimes to the stakes they're held accountable, it's not equivalent to the mistake that they made.
Okay, well, okay, I hear you, but on the basis you said I feel that. On the basis of what? A feeling, or on the basis of what? Wait, hang on a sec. Yo, do you hear this, right? So this is so Sam, what you just said right there, I feel on the basis of the mistake that the police officer made, they're not held accountable at the same level, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yo, that is huge to say that, right? That is huge to say that. Because there are a lot of data out there that you could dig into that, you could answer that question. But when we're talking about something like about policing in the United States, and when we're, reading the headlines of CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever the case is, we want to try to get it close to somehow right. Instead of we just come up with these ideas based on our ideology or whatever, right? Yeah. So I think it's fair for you to say that, but that's the kind of thing that gets us in trouble in this kind of conversation. Antonia, and then I want to show you something.
So for the 422 people that died,
yeah.
how many cops
That
got
were killed.
charged?
Hang on.
That were
Killed.
killed.
Yeah, they didn't just
unarmed?
die.
Yeah.
They
How
were
many
killed.
of those cops went to jail?
That's a great question.
That's my take on that.
No, and here's the thing. If you watch footage and you find a really, really good cop, right, who's just like, yep, very high standards, black, brown, white, whatever it is, high standards, and you take footage and you watch it with that police officer, you would be blown away at the things that they see that maybe you wouldn't see. And so it may be 422, but there are a lot of things that happen in each particular case. And there are sometimes that cops get off, and sometimes they don't get off, right? But there are things that happen in every particular case. And I will say sometimes they get off, and they shouldn't. And the cops believe that too. And other times it's complicated. Here, can I just show you something? Can you go back one? So just in the past decade, 85,000 law enforcement officers investigated, disciplined, fired. That doesn't mean much of anything, really. But what it means is that, although it does mean that things are happening on a regular basis, should it be higher? I don't know. Some people would think it should be a lot higher. Other people would think maybe it shouldn't be higher. But the point is, we have all these data out there. And by the way, can I just go back one? One more? There. This is small. By the way, we're going to do the last top hat in 1 second. I just want to show you this. This right here, these are civilian firearms ownership. There's about 1 billion firearms in the world, and about 40% of them are owned by civilians here in the United States.
Are these like documented firearms? Or
This is estimated. Estimated. This include legal and illegal.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like a war. It's a war zone out there, man. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, listen. For me, I'm not pro-police. I'm not anti-police. You already hear me talk about discrimination. You already hear me talk about racism. You get all that. The problem is, all of this stuff is just incredibly complicated. So this is what happens for me. I have to walk through, and I'm constantly going back and forth trying to get to the truth or trying to get whatever it is. And it's really difficult. Hey, thanks you all for...